How are you this morning? We've heard the story of Jesus healing Peter's mother-in-law. That's what the theme slide up there shows. And I have to begin this morning with a bit of a confession because, well, I was kind of really tempted to start my homily this morning with a mother-in-law joke. But as they say, discretion is the better part of valor, and I realized that I'd probably be outnumbered by mothers-in-law, so I better keep my mouth shut. Very wise, right? But it piqued my curiosity about the whole genre of mother-in-law jokes. I did some research and found out that the first recorded mother-in-law joke was in the 1st century by the Roman satirist Juvenal. And so it's been around for a long time, and I also saw that it transcends many different cultures as well. In fact, Pope Francis a couple of years ago actually told a mother-in-law joke at the World Meeting of Families. He says, families quarrel, sometimes plates can fly, and I won't even speak about mothers-in-law, he said. And so it's kind of a genre of jokes that speak to a lot of people. I discovered the research done by a sociologist, Pamela Cotterill, some work she did in 1989. She actually did research into mother-in-law jokes. And this is what she found out, that mothers-in-law tended not to be upset about these jokes because they seemed so far-fetched that they couldn't possibly apply to them. However, they didn't find them funny. They also found that daughters-in-law didn't find them funny either, largely because they saw that one day the jokes could be applied to them. Well, the story of the healing of Peter's mother-in-law, I believe, is a story that can be applied to us, applied to each of us. In fact, it models how Jesus interacts with all who would seek to be his followers and how Jesus transforms us. Let's look more closely at this. The first point is that we are in need of saving. We see this with Peter's mother-in-law. She has a fever. Now, for us today, that would be like no big deal. You got a fever, like just pop a Tylenol, go to the walk-in clinic and get some antibiotics. Back then, it wasn't so simple, and a fever could be life-threatening. Peter's mother-in-law was seriously ill, and she needed salvation. She needed to be saved. Reminds us of the words of Jesus, who said that it's those who are sick that need a physician, and I have come to save such people. He comes to save those who are sick. Jesus takes us by the hand. We hear in the gospel story that when Jesus heard about Peter's mother-in-law and her need for salvation to be made safe, he goes into her and takes her by the hand. And this reminds us that the salvation that Jesus brings is not abstract, it's concrete, it's interpersonal, it's relational, it's dynamic, it's something that we can experience, something we can touch and feel. Jesus wants to come to each and every single one of us. He wants to enter into our lives and take us by the hand as well. Jesus heals us. Jesus lifted up Peter's mother-in-law and healed her. His touch is a healing touch, and the Lord wants to touch each and every single one of us, wants to bring healing into our lives. We heard in the psalm response, the Lord heals the brokenhearted. Often the healing Jesus brings is he heals the brokenness of our hearts. He heals the brokenness in our lives. He makes us whole. In every way it's possible for a human being to be made whole. Jesus wants to heal us spiritually, psychologically, emotionally, physically, socially. And after we experience the healing of Jesus, we serve him. We saw that as soon as Peter's mother-in-law is healed, what does she do? She gets up and she serves Jesus. And that's the response of the follower of Jesus. Once we encounter him, experience his healing touch, we respond by serving him and serving his purpose, serving his kingdom. I want to take a few minutes this morning to speak to you about the House of Hope. Some of you may be familiar with the House of Hope. It is a community house established within our parish at the St. Anthony's location. It's a community house for men recovering from addictions. They share life together. They share faith together. It's a faith-based community. And right now there are 3 men living in that house by the name, and I want to speak to you today about 2 of them by the name of Cole and Michael. See, the House of Hope came into existence a little over a year ago. It was something that Father Rob had in his heart for a long time. And he saw the opportunity with St. Anthony's Rectory, the house where the priest used to live, being empty. And so the House of Hope came into existence. And I want to share with you a bit of the story of Cole and Michael, and I share their story and their words with you with their permission. First of all, I'd like to speak to you about Cole. Cole is a young man who, for most of his life, was not a churchgoer. In fact, he was a professional athlete in his late teens and early 20s and a national champion. But after an accident that caused a brain injury, he became, in his own words, lost in a world of confusion, drugs, and alcohol. About 2 years ago, he took Alpha in a Catholic parish in Halifax, and afterwards, and during this experience of Alpha, which we spoke about Alpha a few weeks ago, he had a powerful encounter with Jesus that really impacted his life. And shortly after, he met Father Rob, and he moved into the House of Hope. Now, Cole's encounter with Jesus led him to an experience of healing, which in turn led him to serve, just like Peter's mother-in-law. Right now, he serves at the Daily Bread, the outreach to the poor, over in Halifax through St. Mary's Basilica. He serves at Mass. In fact, he was serving at the 9 a.m. Mass right here this morning. He helps to care for the property around the parish and serves at Alcoholics Anonymous. Cole had this to say: God has allowed me the time to see clearly and anointed me with the ability to do all the things I do in the community for the community. I do not feel like I have to do anything. I want to make that very clear to everyone. I want to serve God the way He has served me, with nothing but love and compassion. Isn't that beautiful? Hello, what do you think? I want to tell you about Michael. Michael said this: for over 40 years, I have been away from the church and God due to a past that was so dark I could never see the light. I did not think that God or the church would ever accept me. Just over a year ago, in the middle of a blizzard, Michael felt God nudging him to go to his AA clubhouse and shovel the snow. Little did he know that that night God also nudged a young man in Halifax by the name of Cole to go to the same meeting. And at that meeting, Cole and Michael connected. Again, in Michael's own words, Cole told me about the House of Hope and its vision and mission. I knew that day that this is what was missing. Now, Michael has experienced the healing of Jesus and now serves the parish in many ways. He was here last night, part of the hospitality team. He helps clean up the church after Mass for COVID. He volunteers at the parish office in the mornings, can often be seen there with a big smile on his face. And on April 3rd this year at the Easter Vigil, both Michael and Cole will be welcomed into full communion with the Catholic Church. And I want to give the final words to Michael. He said this: I turn my will and my life over to the care of God every day now. Thank you, Father Rob and Father James, Cole, and to all the members of Our Lady of Guadalupe Parish for your love and acceptance. God bless. Isn't that beautiful? What do you think? Now I ask you a question. Isn't that the kind of parish you want to be? I want to be part of a parish that does just that is able to welcome the Coles and Michaels and the Sallys and the Bettys of this world. I want to be part of a parish that helps people who are aware of their need for salvation to encounter Jesus and his healing touch so that their lives can be transformed and so that they can rise up and serve his kingdom. That's the kind of parish I want to be. To me, that's the most important thing. To be honest, in the future, if we have Mass in a tent, I couldn't care less as long as we're doing this. That is the most important thing. And yet so often in the life of a parish, there can be so many demands and expectations. We can be so busy doing so many things that we don't actually have the time or energy to be intentional about doing this kind of thing, about being this kind of parish. And I think today's gospel can teach us something about that today as well. Let's go back to the gospel reading. Jesus has healed Peter's mother-in-law. Afterwards, crowds came and gathered around the door. Jesus performs a lot of miracles, but the next morning, early in the morning, while it's still dark, he gets up and leaves. The gospel tells us he went to a deserted place to pray. And then the disciples come looking for him. You see, there's a lot of people wanting to know where Jesus is. And they find Jesus and they say this to him. They say, Lord, everyone is searching for you. Everyone is searching for you. And Jesus responds surprisingly with these words. Let us go on to the neighboring towns so that I may proclaim the message there also, for that is what I came out to do. You see, Jesus was focused on his purpose, and so must we. That means saying no to following the demands of the crowds and even disappointing some people. It means being intentional about what makes the difference, even if it means not doing other good things. And so, this is the invitation to us to become this kind of church where people encounter Jesus and are transformed to serve his mission. This is why we're talking about doing things like Alpha. And it's why we're inviting all the parishioners to come and experience a taste of Alpha during the Easter season so we can learn how to use a tool like Alpha to become this kind of church. However, if we as parishioners seek to serve the mission of Jesus in this way, then we must look at this story of Peter's mother-in-law as well and realize that's not just for people out there, that's also for us. We also are in need of salvation on an ongoing way. We also need to experience the touch of Jesus, to experience Jesus taking us by the hand and lifting us up and bringing healing into our lives and equipping us for his mission. And because of that, that's why we are planning this Lenten prayer workshop during the season of Lent. It's going to be a 5-week workshop for an hour and a half, once a week. And what we're hoping to do is to get as many parishioners as possible to come together in person and online, so we can have 100 people here, like this morning, and many more on Zoom. It'll be for 5 weeks, from Fridays from 7 to 8:30 p.m. Here's what we want to do. We want to explore some of the spiritual richness of our Catholic tradition and the different ways, the different pathways to prayer, to discover intimacy with Jesus. Here's what I found after almost 24 years of being a priest, that for many church-going Catholics, their experience of prayer isn't that much different than from what it was when they were children. And I think there's just so much to be discovered. And that's what we hope to do some teaching and reflection on prayer and to help you experience different ways to deepen your prayer life. And so that begins on February the 26th. And our hope is that through this, that we may encounter Jesus in a new way and be ready to serve his mission, to be ready to do, as St. Paul said in the second reading, to become all things to all people, so that some may be saved, he says. I'm ready to do whatever it takes, he said. Just like Jesus was, willing to do whatever it took, to become all things to all people so that they can experience the salvation of Jesus. And if Jesus and St. Paul are ready to do this, then so must we as the church, so must we as a parish. It applies to us. And that's no joke.